The green agenda has never been about saving the planet. Only goofy teens and 20-somethings who obsess on TikTok believe that. The goal is control. In the globalist dream world, a central authority of some sort will decide how far you can travel, when you can travel, and by what means you can travel. Well, they like EVs for obvious reasons. The distance you can travel is easily limited and monitored. But in the end, if their sick fantasy actually becomes reality, what will actually become of U.S. auto manufacturing?
Biden's job-killing EV mandate has dictated that nearly 70% of all cars sold in the United States must be fully electric less than 10 years from now. Do you believe that? It's a government assassination of your jobs and of your industry. The auto industry is being assassinated. It's a transition to hell.
Trump is right. China produces 60 to 90% of the needed minerals to create the batteries that make these cars run. So they can corner the market on EVs. And if Joe Biden is given a second term, that is precisely what will happen. But there's good news. Americans are onto this scam. They're not buying into the EV craze. It was kind of a thing, like a pet rock. But the numbers don't lie. Sales are in the toilet. Car lots across the country are filled with unsold EVs. They can't get rid of these things. It's gotten so bad that nearly 4,000 car dealers sent a letter to Biden saying his demands regarding EV production are unrealistic. Joining me now is one of the men who helped draft that brilliant letter, Paul Larochelle, of course, the vice president of Sheehy Automotive, a great car dealership. Paul, now even the customers, and I know some of them, who bought these cars when gas started going up because of everything they did to the fossil fuel industry, they're regretting their decision. So what are you saying?
Well, there's a vast majority of them for sure that have bought the cars, and in some cases they've returned them at quite a great rate. But I do want to be clear. This letter and its intention and why we got behind it was purely for the facts of the customers. I mean, we interact with on the showroom floor every single day clients, and as they come in and inquire about these vehicles, and then wind up taking them home and realize that, hey, this wasn't quite the range I thought I was going to get, or it's more difficult to charge because there's not as many locations. I think the anxiety of that is one part of it. But then the main purpose of this was really an affordability issue. You know, when you think of an everyday American, we're in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. market. We've got a lot of military here. It's tough to think that a member of the military or a nurse or a school teacher is all of a sudden going to be able to afford a $60,000, $70,000, in some cases $80,000 EV. It's just not practical. So that's also a real driving point to this letter, and that's why we titled it The Voice of the Customer, because, again, not everybody can afford this. It's not a practical means of transportation, affordable transportation for everybody. And again, we're asking the administration just simply to slow this down. Don't force this mandate to where 67% of every person is going to have to buy one of these cars. Your lead-in was exceptional, too, pointing out the fact that the minerals, I mean, where are they coming from? Who's going to supply them?
Paul, now,
almost three-quarters of those minerals, to your earlier segment, were coming from China.
They're mined in it's a terrible process to get these minerals out of the ground. Yeah. It is not ecologically friendly. The big lie about batteries. I mean, look, it's a complicated question, but people should be able to buy what they want. They want to buy EV, get an EV. But most Americans, and I know you know this, they want to get in their car and they want to go. If they want to, let's hit a road trip, let's get to Florida. We're going to go. We're going to be there in 2 days or a day and a half. They want to go. Yeah. They don't want to go and sit for 8 hours and charge their car and hope nobody comes and puts a gun in their face while they're having to charge their car. I mean, that's not what they want. They want to get in their car and they want to go.
If those chargers work.
What does a gas-powered car mean in American history? Does it mean freedom?
It certainly does. And I mean, giving people, again, that ability to literally gas and go, not wait at a charging station, as you pointed out, where, again, these days some of those aren't even working. They're not at full capacity. The infrastructure, I mean, is another huge piece of this. I just was talking to a client a moment ago in my showroom, and he asked me what the car was right behind me. And when I said it's an EV, and he right away went, oh, gosh, I would never own one of those because I would be shocked if I got on Route 50 or the Beltway. And you've been on the D.C. Beltway, I'm sure, Laura. And imagine if your car dies in an EV. Well, if it dies, there's no jump starting it. You have to get it flatbed roll off to get your car off the Beltway and out of harm's way. It's just, we're only asking, again, to take a pragmatic approach, slow this mandate down, give the American public more time. let us make cars, too, that have become, over time, a little bit more affordable.
Well, Paul, New Jersey is banning the sale of gas-powered cars by 2025. California, Virginia as well. One sentence about what that will do to your business by 2035, excuse me.
Well, it's going to drive, it's certainly going to drive those clients to go to other states to find an ICE or a combustible engine car. So they're not going to, I think, succumb to the fact that they got to pay a higher price, put chargers in their home. They'll find a workaround and a way around that. And that's, again, that's not good. It's not sensible.
Paul, how many EVs did you sell this week? About?
I know it's single digits, and we have 30 stores, and we're not. They're not jumping off the shelves. And our day's supply of a typical EV is almost more than triple of what it is of a normal car. So it's a scary time for us. We're carrying a lot of these in stock. I mean, at my one store I'm standing in right now, I've got over almost $1 million in inventory. That, again, it's not an easy sale.
How many gas-powered cars did you sell?
Yeah.
Over the last week?
Here, well, this store in particular, about 100, but it's a ratio that is not making a lot of sense right now. And again, it comes down to the consumer demand isn't there, and that's why, again, one of the main reasons also we're asking for this, just pump the brakes, slow this down, please.
Paul, these are people who've never made a payroll or never run a business making these decisions, and you do it every day, and it's a great car dealership. Paul Larochelle, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.